Welcome back to Video Game News. As always, Goku Sun DBZ here, and hopefully everyone is doing well. With that said, this time, unfortunately, a day late with the video game news, so I apologize. First up, some of the stuff that went on at the Capcom event over the last week. First, we gotta look at more details and info on Monster Hunter Rise Sunbreak, releasing in course June the 30th. So, not too long from now, actually. Also, uh, gotta look at that weird looking, like, multiplayer online, like, Raining Dinosaurs game. There's supposed to be a closed beta test, which you can do sign-ups. Supposed to, I believe, already started. Also, Resident Evil 2 and 3 remake, and also Resident Evil 7 officially coming to PS5. Also, some info on the upcoming DLC stuff, which they're doing quite a bit of stuff for Resident Evil Village. First up, Resident Evil Verse is apparently finally being launched. It's going to be launched alongside the Resident Evil 8 Mercenaries update, which will allow you to play as Chris Redfield, a certain magnetic powered villain from the game, as well as, of course, the giant vampire, of course, Duchess, or from the game, obviously. So that's interesting. Also, get a big, massive expansion on the story, uh, being called Shadows of Rose, involving, of course, the daughter of the main protagonist from RE Village. Also, they're releasing special DLC uh, for a new way to experience Village, actually play the game in third person. So now you will have the options of to be able to play the game in both either first person view or third person view, however you prefer to play the game. And that is a little detail I actually appreciate, is the ability to play the game in third person view. I think will actually make, for old school Resident Evil fans, a lot happier, I believe. Speaking of somebody who has played Resident Evil going all the way back to like 1997. But also, got, um, and that is it for the Resident Evil 8. Also, quickly mention that's most of the basic info updates with Capcom. Quickly also mention a list of games I highly recommend, with, of course, the eShops shutting down for the 3DS and the Wii U at the end of August. So we have just about 2 months left until it all shuts down. And in this edition is a list of some games that I'm recommending people check out and get from the Virtual Console on the Wii U. Next time I'll do one for the 3DS. Specifically, some of the games for different platforms that you can get in the Virtual Console, as a lot of these specific games are hard to find, not to mention very expensive physically. So this is by far the most economic choice to do. But here's the first few of the recommendations. Keep in mind you can get Virtual Console games on the Wii U for the original Nintendo, the Super Nintendo, also the Game Boy Advance, the Nintendo DS, and the Nintendo Wii. So you have quite a variety of plus also the Nintendo 64. That's the big one. The reason. But here's a few suggestions, and also I'll give price info on it. First up is the original classic Legend of Zelda, which you can get for $4.99, as well as Zelda 2. Also, For $6.99, I recommend picking this up digitally. Earthbound Beginners, which was the first game, the actual first, or just Mother, if you rather. Also, you have a interesting beat 'em up game I recommend getting, and this is pretty much your only chance to get the game. You can get this game though on both the Wii U eShop as well, Virtual Console as well as the 3DS. But I recommend getting it for $4.99. Street Fighter 2010: The Final Fight. It takes place in the future, and you play with like a techno version of Ken. So I recommend checking a game. It's a very unique, basically plays more like a Final Fight game, though also elements of it remind me more of like an actual platformer than beat 'em up. But I recommend checking out if you are a big like fan of like old school Capcom stuff and you're just interested to learn more about some less well known games. This is a very good, very almost unknown Capcom game. I recommend checking out actually, but it's going to be on the NES Virtual Console. Also, Ice Climber. Admittedly, it's one of my personal favorite NES games of all time. I think it's somewhat underrated. Also, now on the Super Nintendo side of things, here's a few recommendations. Pac-Man 2, because you don't really see Pac-Man 2 mentioned much in most things. Also, I recommend getting Pac Attack. It's a very interesting Pac-Man game, relatively unknown as well. Also, these are $7.99 each. Also, I recommend checking out Castlevania Dracula X, which is great. Also, Super Mario RPG is a definite must pick up in my opinion. Super Metroid is another game I highly recommend. Also, of course, The Legend of Zelda: A Link to the Past. Now, on the Game Boy Advance side of things, here's a few specific ones I highly recommend. Basically, any of the Super Mario Advance games, I recommend picking up if you get a chance, because the Advance series are some of the best Mario games of all time, by far. And this is a good time to pick them up. Also, if you get a chance, pick up any of the Wario games. Also, I highly recommend picking up the original classic Golden Sun, also Golden Sun, The Lost Age, both superb, great RPGs on handheld, and you can't really find these in pretty much any other way unless you want to pay quite a bit of money for physical versions of the first two Golden Sun games. I recommend this way to do it. Also, Metroid Fusion, which is probably one of the best Metroid games of all time. At least old school 2D era Metroid. It was a great Game Boy Advance Metroid game, though. Also, I highly recommend pick up specifically the Wario Land 4. Then on the N64 side of things, which right now I'm in the process, I'm going to try to probably end up getting about 8 to 10 N64 games. I've so far done like 4. But yeah, I'm taking full advantage of the N64 Vault or digital thing. Here's a few big specific ones I highly recommend though. First, Paper Mario, the original, given $9.99, and is far cheaper than what's going for physically. You're talking well over $100. Also, a pretty much almost impossible to find game, unfortunately, unless you get digitally, I highly recommend is Sin and Punishment. Now, weirdly enough, this game is $11.99, $2 more, but I recommend it. It's actually a really fun game, and it has a very similar playstyle to like the 3DS Kid Icarus game. Also, highly recommend looking into picking up Donkey Kong 64, really good platformer. And that was one of the ones I picked up. Also, they have available F-Zero X, which is a great game I recommend. Here's an absolute must pick up I recommend. Ogre Battle 64. This game is going for well over $200 physical. Get it digital for $10, more than worth it. Also, on the DS side of things, a few recommendations. The Legend of Zelda Spirit Tracks for $9.99. It's a very, pretty much unwell known, or rather, unknown Zelda game with mainstream audiences. It's a very unique game, to say the least. Also, I highly recommend that you can get for $9.99. The Pokemon Ranger games are some very unique Pokemon games. Also, I recommend checking out the Legend of Zelda game Phantom Hourglass, another good one. And the last of recommendations for this is Star Fox Command, which is basically a sequel to Star Fox 64, but released exclusively on the Nintendo DS. But it's definitely worth checking out and picking up. Well, that's a little bit of box office news for June the 10th to June the 12th weekend. Doctor Strange came in third place, a drop of 43%, making an additional $5,215,000, bringing its worldwide total now to $931,669,000. Then we have also its domestic box office total was 405 million. Also, coming at number 2 was Top Gun Maverick, dropping 42%, making an additional 51,855,000. Well, congratulations, it's doing very well. Coming in at number 1 for the opening weekend at the time was Jurassic World, the new one, which made 145 million opening weekend, and worldwide doing very well. Also, surprisingly, Top Gun Maverick has now done like $755 million worldwide, so that's quite impressive. About 3 times the amount of the original Top Gun film, but that was the 80s. So, with that said, that's it for this edition of Video Game News, and I'll see y'all next time, and talk a little bit about some definite recommendations for the Virtual Console on the 3DS. See you then. Same YouTube time, same YouTube channel.